While rummaging through a second-hand bookshop in Melbourne nearly a decade ago, a book called Jack of Cape Grim caught the eye of Dr. Toscano. This book told the little-remembered history of Tasmanian Aboriginal resistance fighters Tunnerminnerwait and Molboy Henier, who waged guerrilla warfare on the colonists in Melbourne and were eventually hanged in 1842.
I thought it was a great Australian story that needed to be told.
The government of Sindh province in Pakistan is caught up in violent political infighting. During August alone, 2,000 people were killed in Karachi. The government is ill-equipped to deal with the massive internal displacement of this month's floods. Sophie Reid-Hamilton from Action Aid in Australia says the province's lack of infrastructure contributed to the floods' damaging impact.
The two factors that have come to light.
An Oxfam report published yesterday says with the imminent withdrawal of international troops from Afghanistan, there is a risk the government may sacrifice women's rights to secure a political deal with the Taliban and other armed opposition groups. Already in 2009, to win support from Shia hardliners ahead of elections, President Hamid Karzai approved the Shia Personal Status Law, which allowed for men to deny their wives food as punishment for refusing sexual demands. Last week, President Karzai ruled out further attempts to negotiate peace with the Taliban. He said the killing of Burhanuddin Rabbani, who was leading efforts to start peace negotiations with the Taliban, had convinced him to focus on dialogue with Pakistan instead. As part of the growing protest movement in Russia against President Vladimir Putin, on February 21, a feminist collective called Pussy Riot performed a punk song in a Russian Orthodox cathedral in Moscow. From my understanding, you're arguing that the fishermen that are bringing people to Australia, they're not breaking any law, because it's not against the law to bring people that have a right to seek asylum?
Well, look, one of the things under the Migration Act itself.
39% of young Australians aged between 18 to 29 were of the opinion that democracy is preferable to any other kind of government. So the inference is that 60% are not favouring democracy. Do you think that this means in Australia are young people turning away from democracy?
Look, I don't think it is.
Do police have any kind of discretion in this? Is there anything more that they could do to further check that these children don't have bail conditions? Where do you place the calls for constitutional recognition in the context of the demands for sovereignty or the movement for sovereignty? Do you think that the NAPLAN method is culturally appropriate for Aboriginal people, and how does it relate to Indigenous ways of learning? Women were at the forefront of the protests in Tahrir Square, but in the transitionary period, the voices of women are being sidelined. In post-Mubarak Egypt, virginity tests have even been conducted on female protesters after they've been detained by the ruling Supreme Council of Armed Forces. There's also been reports of women being raped in the thousands in Libya. What do you see are the prospects for women's liberation in these new societies? Tim, how is the issue of a free trade agreement being linked to visas for unskilled migrant workers in Australia? In the midst of these conditions of extreme food shortages, unsafe shelter, and a very damaged health service, what has motivated you and your colleagues to reopen the Palestine Technical College? And what does this project represent for the community around you?
Along with that feeling of sense of responsibility toward our students, after the education process was halted, we worked hard to ensure the continuity of education and avoid wasting any further opportunity.
Professor Iyad Abu Salim from Palestine Technical College in Khan Yunis speaking there with Liz Cush.